Welcome to the Talent Empowerment Podcast, where we share stories of great leaders so you can lift up your organizations, your teams, and your community. I'm your host, Tom Finn, and today we have an amazing leader who has already lived multiple lives. 13 years experience as a pastor and spiritual advisor, 4 years experience as a school teacher, 12 years experience as a very, very successful entrepreneur. You know him as the Real Jason Duncan. Jason, my friend, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here, Tom. This is awesome.
Well, if you haven't met Jason yet, you might be the only one. But let me tell you a little bit about what he's been up to the last few years. He's a TEDx speaker. He's launched over a dozen startups, consulted on dozens of startups and growth stage companies, and worked with entrepreneurs. He's the founder of the Exeter Club, which is an exclusive mastermind for select entrepreneurs who want to live the exit lifestyle. Don't worry, we'll get deep into that. He's the founder of the Real Jason Duncan Enterprises. Now, this is a world-class coaching and strategic consulting company serving entrepreneurs and business owners, not just locally, but around the world. And if you haven't heard, he's also the host of the syndicated podcast, The Root of All Success. It airs on the C-Suite Radio Network and on all of your favorite podcast platforms. I'm just delighted to have you on the show today. What an empire, my friend. This has been one heck of a journey, I imagine.
It has, and the empire status goes down significantly when you walk behind the curtain, but thank you anyway.
Well, look, you didn't wake up this morning with 100 episodes in The Root of All Success and this wonderful track record of business. Tell us how it all started.
Well, in 2010, I was teaching school and loved teaching school. I was an 8th grade American history teacher, and I thought I would, I'd only been doing it for 4 years, and I thought, this is going to be what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I loved education. I loved teaching kids. I loved the impact I was making, and I was really good at it. I was the number one teacher in my county for tests, for my subject matter. And my test scores for my kids' test scores were higher than anybody's. I was really good at the craft. Well, that didn't matter when the government, because government makes bad decisions for a living, when the government decided that they had to make some cuts because of the Great Recession, they had to cut teachers. I didn't have tenure. I was the last guy hired in that particular building, and they had to cut 2 teachers out of that building, and I was one of the guys.
Last in, first out.
Exactly. And so they made the decision that way, and found myself at a crossroads thinking, well, I love teaching. Why would I give this up? What am I going to do? So I thought first I would go, get a teaching job somewhere else, but there was nobody hiring teachers around that time. Just the recession was taking its toll on the whole economy, and the education departments were no exception to that. Even private schools, I couldn't get a job at a private school. Nobody was hiring anywhere. So I found myself as an accidental entrepreneur. I decided that I didn't want to go to the corporate world, wasn't ready for that. Thought, well, I'll start a company and see if I can make this happen. And it did. It worked. I put myself in a deadline. I said, if I don't get some money coming in, a deal happened by the 15th of August, which was the last day I was going to get paid. I thought I've got this summer to figure this out. And on August the 12th, I closed what turned out to be a multi-million-dollar project over several years with the local hospital. And that's when my entrepreneurial career took off. And I ended up building that company to pretty significant status. And that's how my entrepreneurial journey started. And of course, there's lots of other nuances to that as it led me to what I'm doing today, but that's how I got my start in the entrepreneur world.
How did you feel when you got laid off and you were sort of facing this abyss of trying to find really not just work, but something that moved you, that you were passionate about?
I was devastated. I remember that day. It was in April that year that I got the news, and I went to my wife's office on the way home. She worked for a local investment firm as the senior office kind of manager, and I went to her office and I stopped in. Of course, it's about 3:30 in the afternoon. She has another hour and a half of worth of work before she can leave and come home. And I told her, I said, "Hey, I just had this conversation with my principal. I'm finishing out this school year, but I don't have a job next year." And she had a really bad day that day. Obviously, I didn't know that, but she'd had a bad day that day too, and it just compounded. And there was devastation and fear in her eyes, and not so much fear from a financial standpoint, although that was in the background, but fear for me because she knew how much I was made to teach. Like, I'm really good at it, and I loved it so much. And so, I went on home, and she finished out her work day, and it was a blur. Like, I don't really remember a lot of the decisions or conversations that we had over those next few days and weeks, but it was devastating to know that the thing that I had accidentally discovered as a school teacher that I was really good at, I was no longer going to get to do. So it was a pretty dark time.
I sort of akin it to professional athletes that retire from their sport maybe a little bit too early, because they go through a transition where they're really not sure what's next and what's behind the following door. And you had such passion for teaching and you were performing at such a high level, it doesn't make any sense that it would end. But then what you did is you sort of walked through that door thinking a little bit differently and found something that really made sense to you.
Yeah. And I think that I was talking about this with my mindset coach just the other day about, if you can imagine, we live in this bubble of what's known to us, like what we know and experience and what we think is possible. And at the time, I was making $38,000 a year as a school teacher. We lived in a decent house and had decent cars, and we had car debt, student loan debt, like every other American household. And we had a couple of credit cards. We had 2 kids in private school that we were trying to pay for. Like we had all the things that anybody else, and that was our bubble. That was our experience. That was what we knew. And if you just kind of whispered in my ear, hey, one day you're going to have a multi-million-dollar company that is going to be recognized in national magazines, and you're going to be speaking on stages before, thousands and thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people. Like I would have thought you were nuts, because that wasn't even in the bubble. It wasn't something I could perceive. But once that bubble burst and I was forced to reconsider what was possible, new things came into focus, and I started seeing what is possible. And so, okay, well, maybe I can start a company. I don't really know much about entrepreneurship or business, but maybe I can do it. And then when that started to succeed, the bubble began to blow up and expand even more, where I could see more opportunities. And now, some of my good friends are multimillionaires, and we're all, running big companies, and we're doing successful things. We're going to trips on places, or going to trips to places that it was not even a possibility in my old life. It didn't even occur to me that things, I was just, right before I got on this call with you today, talking with the organizer of an event in Costa Rica in December that he asked me to speak at. Like, why would this school teacher from Gallatin, Tennessee be invited to speak to these super successful entrepreneur men from all over the world in Costa Rica in December? He wouldn't. I had to change, and I'm very happy about the change, even though it was scary as hell on the way through.
Well, I imagine it was scary, but I also think that trip to Costa Rica might be a pretty good time as well. And hope that
I've never been, so this is it's going to be good.
Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. So you have this beginning, and then you have this sort of transition, and you're going into entrepreneurship. Now, why didn't you just stop at the first company? You could have just said, "Hey, I'm gonna lean into my first company. I'm gonna really focus here, and then I'm gonna do what others think is the right thing to do. I'm gonna go sell that company, and I'm gonna sit on my porch and have a beverage and relax and put my feet up."
So that scenario that you just painted is so minuscule in the realm of possibility for most entrepreneurs. It's very much like, I heard a guy on TikTok doing a video about little kids who want to be NBA stars. And he talked about how many kids want to be in the NBA, and it was hundreds of thousands. And then how many kids want to play college ball, and how many kids, like the number of people who get to do that versus who want to do it is like, the numbers don't even match. It's not even a fair comparison. It's less than 1%. So the entrepreneur experience is no different, and probably even worse odds to experience what you just painted. most companies that we read about that sold, and the owner, founder, whoever gets to do, has FU money, which is what they call it, where they can do whatever they want, sit on their porch and do, like they're done. That number is, I don't know what the official number is, but it's minuscule. It's tiny. And the reason is most of us as entrepreneurs build businesses that revolve around our personality, our ability, our skill set, and our network. And it's to be expected, but that's not sustainable. And that's what happened to me. So the reason I didn't stay in that business is because when I started realizing that I'd built a business that revolved around me, being the somewhat smart person that I am, I realized, okay, well, I got to get out of this. So let me just sell it. Well, the unfortunate fact is if you build a business like that, your business is worth very little. Even if you're doing multi-millions of dollars and you're very profitable, it's not worth very much. And that's what I discovered. My business, even though we had a very strong bottom line, very strong top line, great team, I couldn't sell it. I mean, I could, but it certainly wouldn't be the scenario that you talked about. So I came up with a new plan. How can I exit this business without selling it? How can I exit this business without exiting it? Which I now call exit without exiting is kind of my thing. But how do I do that? Even though I'd never seen anybody do it, nobody knew how to do it, there wasn't a plan or structure, I figured that out. It took me about 2.5, 3 years to really kind of figure out what was going to have to happen. And now that I've done that, I still own the business and I still, get all the benefits financially and tax otherwise of ownership. But I have nothing to do with the day-to-day operations whatsoever. So your original question, Tom, was, well, why didn't I just stay in there? Well, I just knew somewhere deep down inside that wasn't what I was supposed to be. That's not why I'm on the planet. Running an electrical and lighting company, not why I'm here. I didn't know what the heck I was going to do when I wasn't running that. And I went through like a 6-month identity crisis when I walked away, but I found the new bubble. I found there was more possibility, and I wouldn't have known it until I got out of my own way.
Well, I love the way you said that, because there's so many people that start to build a business, think that it's just going to be a quick exit at some point, sit on the porch, and the way you articulated that, I think, is really important, because most businesses are built around the founder, as you said very elegantly. And so how do we actually take a step forward to not building this around the founder? Give us one tip the audience could use. Say, okay, there's a start that I could do something.
Well, the topic of my TED Talk was the tip that I'll give, and that is you've got to embrace delegation. You've got to take off the hero cape and be done with the hero syndrome is what I call it. And the hero syndrome is when entrepreneurs feel like that they are the only person that can fix the problems in the business. Whatever that problem is, they're the only one that can do it. They're the only salesperson, the only tech person, the only admin person, the only finance person, whatever it happens to be, whatever your specialty is, you're the number one person at that. And you put on the hero's cape and you swoop in to save the day every time that needs to be done. Until you get rid of the cape, you're never going to be able to step away from the daily operations of your business. You have built a job. Congratulations, you're a job owner, not a business owner. Most entrepreneurs start businesses to build a better life, not build a better job. But the unfortunate part is most entrepreneurs who start businesses just build a better job. And I don't know if that's even debatable. Now, you get paid more, or if you're doing it right, you should get paid more than you did in the corporate world. But you certainly spend a heck of a lot more time in it than you did in the corporate world. The old saying is you trade the 9 to 5 for 24/7. And so the first thing that you have to do to not build the business around you is you got to embrace delegation and take off the hero cape. And delegation is not just assigning tasks to people. It's assigning that task and entrusting that task and empowering that person to act on your behalf. And there are certain ways to do that. It took me about 18 months of deep study into delegation before I truly realized how to do it successfully, because nobody taught me how to do it. No, I never saw anybody do it well. Most people either confiscate or abdicate. They don't delegate. They either assign it and then decide that you can't do it. Just give it to me. I'll do it. That's confiscation, even though we call it delegation. And then the other side is they say, well, here, go do this task, and then never look back, and then they never check in again. That's abdication. That's not delegation. So that one tip that you need is to delegate. You've got to deeply understand it and do it well, and that is your first step in getting out of the way.
And I think what I heard is, as you delegate, have a follow-up plan so that you can make sure that things are being completed, or you can answer the questions along the way to lift that person up and support them on their career journey. Because we can't all do this on our own. We need good people around us. We got to lift them up, support them, and help grow our staff and our friends and our communities.
That's right. As a matter of fact, one of the things I teach my clients when I'm coaching them about delegation is the 6-step process to how to truly learn to delegate. And that's part of what you just talked about. You got to make the list of the things that you do on a regular basis other people could do. Then second, you got to pick one of those things and decide you're going to delegate it for no more than 30 days. So that's just a test. And then the third thing is you check in with that person only once a week. You don't check in more than that, because if you do, you run the risk of confiscating the task. If you check in less than that, you run the risk of abdicating. So you check in once a week. And then the fourth thing is, like, when you're meeting with them, you can only praise them. You cannot correct them. And that's the hardest part, because if you start correcting them, you haven't really empowered them to do it. Empowering means empowering them to fail too. They've got to be able to fail on their own or succeed on their own. And then fifth, once they can do it at 80% of your output, then it becomes their job permanently and it's off your list forever. And then finally, you just go back and repeat that process until your list is empty. And if you follow that setup that I put together there, eventually you'll be able to delegate things without having to go through that structure of a program. You could just delegate and know just instinctively, I've assigned, empowered, and entrusted this person correctly, and I don't have to go through those stages. But if you're learning, go through those 6 steps, and I promise you'll be a master delegator within 6 months.
All right, I got to ask the challenger question, and it's coming in hot, because on one of those steps, you said you can't correct the person that you delegated to. So let's say I'm going through this process, and the person is absolutely butchering the task. What is my place in terms of providing experience and education and support to this individual without correcting them?
So it's a good question, and it is the point of pushback in the entire process. So you pick the right one. So here's the thing: you will survive the dip. There is going to be a dip in productivity. There's going to be a dip in the outcome, and you will survive it. Everybody does. Everybody has. Because remember, at one point, you were the dip. You didn't know how to do it, and you figured it out. So give Bob the chance to figure it out too. Let him fail. Now, the caveats are, of course, if somebody's going to go to jail because of what he did, the building's going to blow up, or somebody's going to die, obviously there are legal and safety things that you have to step in and save the day. You got to make sure that doesn't happen. But short of that, this is only a 30-day test. So if Bob's butchering it, your job is to sit down and say, okay, Bob, so how'd things go this week? Tell me how it went. Well, it went really great. And he starts talking about how great he did. And you're like, no, you didn't. Now you got a problem. Bob is not the right guy for that task. And at the end of this 30 days, you're going to say, thank you, Bob. I appreciate you participating in this. You may go back to your normally scheduled programming. But if he says, I don't know, it's not really working out the way I thought it would. What do you think I'm doing wrong? Okay, well, Bob, what do you think you're doing wrong? Okay, and then he starts saying, yeah, that's correct. That's right. So I'm not correcting him. I'm letting him figure out. So the law of discovery teaches us that humans discover more by what they do on their own and discover on their own than what they're told. So you're really short-circuiting the process by correcting Bob. You've got kids. We talked about this pre-show. I've got kids. Kids don't learn that the candle or the fire is hot until they touch it. That's right. The only way they're, and you're a sadistic person if you take your kid's hand and put it in the flame. You got to let them discover it. But you can say, hey, it's hot, don't touch it. Hey, it's hot, don't touch it. Hey, it's hot. You can say that a bazillion times. And you can tell them the correct way to do it. They're going to have to touch it. Bob's going to have to touch the flame. When the things start burning down, Bob, if he's competent and a good employee, he should recognize it and then make some corrections. If he doesn't recognize it and continues on in that direction, well, you've probably hired somebody wrong. You need to fire him and go get somebody else.
Yeah, well said. So let's talk about hiring and firing, since you touched on it. You have any methods or principles or real sort of pillars that you stand by when you're looking to hire talent to do this delegation?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. We just, in my mastermind, the Exeter Club, we just had our weekend workshop for the third quarter this past weekend here in Nashville. And the entire workshop was dedicated to how to invest in people. And there's really 4 parts of the investing in people that we have to do as entrepreneurs who want to live the exit lifestyle and who don't want to be involved in daily operations. And the first one is hire the right people. That is the absolute first one. And so I spent a good hour doing a deep dive into a method that I've developed over the last 12 years running my lighting company, how to identify, find, hire, and onboard the right people. I think I might have said hire the right people, but when you hire the right people, it makes all the difference in the world. It keeps you from having to fire people. So hiring, I've got a PDF document that I've developed called How to Hire and Onboard the Right Team Members. And I'd be happy to provide it to your listeners if people want to just DM me on Instagram, how to hire, and I'll be happy to send that out. But it starts with writing the ad. And everybody thinks, well, that's dumb. Of course you have to write the ad. No, I want you to pretend that you're job hunting right now. Just pick an industry, pick a title, pick something, and go on Indeed or LinkedIn and just do a search and read the first six. And they will all sound like they were written by the same agency for a different company. That's all. We are a very exciting company to work for. We've got great growth opportunities. We offer competitive salary and wages and benefits and blah. It's all the same crap. And as a job hunter, as I'm looking for a job, all of that just sounds like Charlie Brown's teacher. There's nothing about it that pulls me out. The only thing they'll scan for is money, because everything else just sounds the same. So they're just looking for the dollars. When you attract people that are looking for the dollars, you're attracting the wrong people, because you don't want a purely money motivated person working for you. There's only 3 reasons why employees work anywhere. Number 1 is for opportunity. Number 2 is recognition. Number 3 is money, in that order. And if you got somebody showing up just looking for money, you've hired the wrong person. So when you write your ad wrong, you're attracting the wrong person. And that's why so many people hire the wrong people. They're attracting the wrong people because of the ad. So what do you do with the ad? Well, you write an ad in your personality as the founder, or as the entrepreneur, or as the owner of the company. Write the story. It doesn't have to be long, but write the story of the company. What's going on? Why you started it? Where it's wanting to go? Why you're hiring this person? And be honest. Like, hey, we hired somebody in this position and they were terrible for it. They were just a terrible fit. We made a mistake. We're trying to find somebody better. Are you that person? And if you say that, the wah, 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 everything they're hearing through every ad that they read, yours is going to pop. And they'll go, ooh, there's something special about this. And I'll tell you a true quick story as an illustration. I've got one employee who works for my lighting company to this day. He's been with me 8 or 9 years. And he can tell you, if you just go find him and just say, hey, tell me about the ad, he will tell you that he remembers the ad. That's crazy. I didn't know how much the ad, how important it was until after I hired him, and then he was on the team. And then he told me, let me tell you, Jason, why I wanted to interview with you as opposed to these other multi-million-dollar successful companies. I'm just a small startup at that point. I said, well, tell me. And he goes, it was the ad. He goes, I heard something in the ad. It sounded like a human. It sounded like you. It sounded like a personality. It sounded like somebody I wanted to work for. So I think one of the tips on hiring the right people is just writing a better ad.
Yeah, and coming down to authenticity, I mean, that's what I hear loud and clear blaring over the loudspeaker here is be authentic. You don't have to copy and paste from somebody else's ad. You got to just be authentic and tell the story about what's really going on.
Yep.
Well, I love the way you said that. I think the other bullet point that I tend to think about is mission. Is there a mission that the company is taking on? Is there something in the community? Are we lifting up others along the way? And I tend to find that when we're looking for talent, one of the key components is finding people that are mission driven and have something going on in their life that pushes them into this type of role in this type of company.
That's right. Well, and I think that's part of, if you go back to those 3 things, why people really work for you, it's opportunity, recognition, and money, in that order. And so the opportunity plays into what you're talking about there, Thomas, that mission. Where is this thing going? Are we just making widgets and we don't care what the hell happens next? Or is there some big picture that I get to play a part in as an employee and a team member in this company? That's opportunity. And that's what people work for. That's what they want. I mean, you think about your experience. Listeners, think about your experience as an employee or an entrepreneur. Why are you doing what you're doing? It is mostly because of the opportunity. It has something to do with the money, but that's third down the list. You want the opportunity. You want to be recognized for your work. Some people want badges and trophies. Other people want the title. Other people just want a good attaboy every once in a while. But whatever it is, they want to be recognized that they're making a contribution. And then third, the finances have to be, commensurate with whatever it is that's going on. You can't just pay crap because you got great opportunity and recognition, but you also can't pay top dollar and have no opportunity and no recognition. It's a balance of those three things. And one of my mentors taught me that a long time ago, and it changed my life and how I look at hiring people.
So now that you've hired a ton of people, you've built a handful of companies, you've built a way to exit a company without exiting a company, and you're sharing that with the world. How do you actually manage all of this on a day-to-day basis? You're pretty heavy in social. You're doing a podcast. You're a member of the community. You're a husband and a father. There's a lot on your plate, my friend. How do you balance all of this?
I think I've got to follow my own advice, which sometimes is hard to do for us, driven people. But I balance it the same way that I teach my clients to balance it. I really make sure that I keep my open cycles closed. I'm not a stressed out person. So there's this concept called the law of open cycles that teaches us that stress is caused by having too many cycles open at any one time. And cycles are anything that has to be done, any task, or could be a relationship. It could be something that needs to be done. And so I manage those really tightly, and I don't let let cycles open that are not necessary to me. My wife and I have been married for 27 years. She's my best friend, love her like more than the world itself, like more than life itself. It's just, she's awesome. But she has a problem, like I used to, with accepting open cycles. Somebody'd say something and she just kind of take it. And so she's starting to realize, oh, this is a problem. I didn't need to open that cycle in my life. That cycle wasn't required of me. And sometimes women are more empathetic and intuitive about things, and they think, oh, I should do this because they're probably I'm like, nope, that has nothing to do with me. I'm not going to open that cycle. So I take my own medicine. I'm somebody described me, a former employee of mine described me as the most laid back, driven person they'd ever met. And I never heard that before. And now I take pride in that. I think that's good. I'm pretty laid back. I'm not over the top with anybody about anything. I don't get stressed out. And I think it's because I've learned a little bit about how the universe works. And this is why I train my clients to do the same thing.
Yeah, this concept of open cycles is a really interesting one. I always think of my open cycles as, when my wife asked me to, clean the garage because it's a little bit of a mess and the kids' bikes are everywhere, right? And that's another task on my list. Or perhaps I haven't written that handwritten thank you card, Jason, right? That I certainly owed somebody, and it's sitting there on my desk and I'm looking at it. And I know I'm going to find time, but it's right in the back of my brain. Are these good examples of open cycles for people to be thinking about?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, you just mentioned that. I have 2 thank you notes I have to write today that I've got a dinner I'm going to tonight, and I was going to hand deliver them, and I completely forgot. You just mentioned that, so thank you. So yeah, those are examples. I think your to-do list is your open cycle list, kinda, but there's so many other things. I mean, the way I look at it is this, and if I'd been prepared for this conversation, I would have my I've got 2 books that I use to illustrate this in my bookshelf over there, but one's a really thin, skinny book, and one is a very thick book. And what I tell people as I'm illustrating this is I want you to pretend that every open cycle in your life, every task, every relationship is only on one page. I don't care how big or hairy the open cycle is, or it's like, I just need to write one thank you note. Okay. That's tiny. But whatever it is, it's only on one page. The thicker your book, the more stressed you feel. The more stressed you are, the more stress you feel in life. Now, some of us can handle a thicker book than other people. Some people are just manic and they all the time. They can't handle thick books. But the point of that is, the illustration is, you got to tear the pages out as fast as possible and add pages as little as possible. So that's why you got to manage both ends of that. You got to manage the tearing out of the tasks to keep your book tiny. And you got to manage, if anybody wants to slide a piece of paper over and ask you to do something, like, nope, not doing that, not doing that. I'm not going to take that on as my responsibility. And, I've got, my kids are older. I got a 22-year-old and an almost 20-year-old. My 19-year-old daughter, she's trying to figure out college again. She took a year off because of COVID and all that crap that was going on. Insanity. But anyway, she's trying to go back. Well, she's an adult. If she comes and asks me to help her, I'll help her. But I'm not going to go and say, hey, can I help you sit down and register for classes today? Now, people might think I'm a creep as a dad. No, my daughter has to discover on her own how to do this stuff. That's her job. Where on the other hand, my wife is like worried to death that she's not registered for classes. Should I go help her? Like, I'm not opening that cycle in my life. I'm not putting that page in my book. But if my daughter walked in right now and said, Dad, I need some help, I'm going to adore that she asked, first of all, and then I'm going to sit down and I'm going to do it. I'll let her add that page to my book because it's the right thing to do. But I don't take them when they're not mine to take.
Yeah, well said. And you've built a beautiful melody here of balance and being able to manage businesses by using delegation, manage your own life by using core philosophies that you stick to, and then make sure that it's overlaid with love and compassion. I can see it coming through the video, and I can hear it in your voice. Is there anything missing in your life right now, or are we completely locked in?
More clients.
says every entrepreneur everywhere.
That's right. Well, I mean, that's the conundrum. I mean, is anything missing? Sure, there's a lot of things that are not complete that I'm trying to see happen, but no, I do not walk around with a sense of lack or scarcity. I'm living an abundant life. I mean, Jesus is my Savior, and He said, "Hey, if you follow me, you'll have life, and you'll have life abundantly." And I experience that every day. I don't have a problem with what I don't have. I mean, I'd love to have more clients, and I will get them. But I don't sit today gnawing on my fingernails, wondering how I'm going to pay the bills. Like that's not part of my experience. But no, I'm feeling really good about where things are and where they're going. I'm even more excited about where they're going than where they are.
Oh, that's beautifully said. And if I'm listening to the show, I'm thinking, man, when I grow up, I want to be like Jason Duncan. So how do people get a hold of you? How can they find you, seek you out, work with you, learn from you, become your friend? What's the best way to do that?
So I'm taking applications for friends right now.
Well, I'm putting mine in right after the show.
So what's funny, though, the reason I say that is some of our best friends in the world just moved to Florida from Nashville. And so on the ramp up to them leaving, we hung out all the time. We saw each other 2 or 3 times a week. We'd get together for dinner, for coffee, for breakfast, whatever. We were together all the time. And now they're not here. And so what I told them, we were joking. I said, man, you guys are moving, so I'm going to have to put an ad on Craigslist for new friends. And I think I'm going to go for an upgrade. I think there's some stuff I'd rather I'm going to look for. But on a serious note, to get in touch with me, just follow me on any social media platform, The Real Jason Duncan. Instagram and LinkedIn are the 2 places I hang out the most. Instagram probably more than LinkedIn, but therealjasonduncan.com is my website, and that's how you get in touch with me, and I'd be honored to connect. And like I said, if you're interested in that how to hire people, I think it's a 15-page PDF. It's very detailed. It's not just your average 1-pager just to try to get your email address so I can put you on a list. It's actually real content and data that you can use. If you just DM me, you have to go to Instagram to do this. It won't work anywhere else, but go to Instagram and DM me how to hire. Just the words "how to hire." I'll be happy to send it to you.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, Jason, thank you for being on the show. We are very grateful for the good work that you're doing locally, the good work that you're doing around the world. We've covered a lot of different topics today for entrepreneurs, but really for people in general on how to live a successful life, how to do it in peace, how to be balanced, how to look at the world in a smart and thoughtful way. And we'll find you at therealjasonduncan.com and on Instagram as well. So it has been a pleasure having you on the show, my friend.
Great job, Tom. Thank you for letting me be here.
And thank you for joining the Talent Empowerment Podcast. I hope this conversation with Jason lifted you up so you can lift up your teams, your organizations, and your communities. Let's get back to people and culture together, my friends. We'll see you on the next episode.